Okay, let's start. My name is Dashwan Feng. I've been given the supreme honor of moderating today's event. I knew Lars, about 5-6 years already.
No more.
Or maybe more, since he and KK were the founders of this intellectual powerhouse in Singapore known as the Institute for Advanced Studies at Nanyang Technological University. I think KK will say something about that. Lars and KK really created something absolutely fantastic in Asia. I met he and Mrs. Brink in Macau when they came to visit us, and we really got to know him deeper as a human being, not just as a string theorist. I think today's list of people that is attending this memorial session is a testimony of Lars's personality. About last year in September 24th, I organized a conference in honor of Madame C.S. Wu. And I must say that Lars was probably the major person who helped us to make that event a tremendous success. And it was so sad for me to see that a month later, he left us. Anyway, let's begin with the presentations. We will start with, I think, the person who introduced KK to Lars, who is President Bertil Anderson. I call him president because he was President Emeritus of Nanyang Technological University for many, many years.
Bertil?
Thanks. It's really very special for me to take part in this memorial event dedicated to Lars Brink, good friend, and of course his scientific contributions, I guess we will hear about that. So I'm of course a Swedish professor, so it was natural for me to interact with, my interaction with Lars started in Sweden. As you know, Lars was a professor in physics at the Chalmers University in Gothenburg, which is in the very west of Sweden, where he did groundbreaking research within theoretical physics. And I guess we're going to hear more about that today. I'm, of course, a simple chemist, and I was working in Stockholm University. Stockholm is in the very east of Sweden, and Sweden is quite a big country. The common ground for my interactions with Lars was the Royal Academy of Sciences, Swedish Royal Academy of Sciences in Stockholm, to which we were both delegates. And we often interacted together in meetings and discussions in the academy environment. And Lars, as you know, was very active and contributed significantly. And it was always interesting to discuss with him science, but also other academic matters. An important task for the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences is to select a modest prize called the Nobel Prize, and a Nobel Prize in physics, and of course also in chemistry. And a few trusted members, the most trusted members of that academy, are selected to serve in the Nobel committees. And Lars, and also myself for a period, were involved with the Nobel committees, and Lars for several years, I think 2001 to 2013. And he did there a fantastic job. And eventually he was elected as chair for the Nobel Prize Committee in Physics. A very important task. In 2007, I left the country of Sweden and Europe to take up a position as provost and president at Nanyang Technological University, NTU, in the far away Singapore. And this meant, of course, that I could be less involved in Sweden, and I could see my colleagues at the Royal Academy of Sciences much more rarely. But Lars Brink was actually one exception, because after I had arrived in Singapore after a couple of years, he also became engaged in Singapore, even at my university, Nanyang Technological University. Of course, as we heard, KKPOA has initiated what became known as the Institute of Advanced Studies, which I, as president, I think I tried to support it as much as I could, and I also like to be engaged scientifically as well. And Lars became a visiting professor there, so I really like that. Another Swede on campus, and the institute attracted many top-level scientists, and it was really a crown jewel of NTU. And I think Lars and maybe myself as well, we could contribute by having knowing a lot of the Nobel Prize winners that came to Singapore to interact and give talks and so on. I guess we will hear also that Lars was also an editor for World Scientific Publishers in Singapore. So we started out, Lars and I started out in Sweden, and then Singapore became our new platform to interact. Formally within the Institute of Advanced Science, but informally over a lunch, a cup of coffee, or a walk in the beautiful tropical campus at NTU. So here, the physicist and the chemist from Sweden, from the cold Sweden, could enjoy the warm climate together of the tropics and the scientific ambiance of Singapore. So for me, Lars has always been around as a stimulating colleague, both in Sweden and in Singapore. And it's of course now very sad that he's no longer around with us. But there are many, I have very many good memories from my interactions with Lars. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bertil, for this heartwarming comment about Lars. Next, we have, of course, KKPOA. KK, he is the founding director and emeritus of the Institute for Advanced Studies of NTU. KK?
Yeah, hi, hello, everybody.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm here today to pay my tribute to a very good friend of mine, Professor Lars Brink. He was not only a great physicist, but also a man with a vision, passion for science, and a commitment to make a difference. I have been privileged enough to know and work closely with Professor Brink for over 4 decades. After World Scientific Publishing was founded in the early 1980s, Professor Brink accepted our invitation to serve as a managing editor for our 2 physics journals, International Journal of Physics A and Modern Physics Letter A. His extensive knowledge, support play a significant role in the success of these 2 journals. When I had the opportunity to organize the International Conference in High Energy Physics, which usually we call it Rochester Conference, in 1990, Professor Brink was one of the key supporters and played an important role in organizing the section of superstrings. The event was a very successful event, and the guest of honor was our Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong. And in July 2005, we set out this Institute of Advanced Studies at the Nanyang Technological University. And for this IAS, is a very active institute for the past 10 years or 13 years. every month or so, we have a workshop or conference or even school from IAS, NTU. Professor Brink also accepted as a visiting professor post for a few months every year during the period of 2014 to 2018. During these 4 years, he really helped out to organize many important school workshops and conferences. I just named few of the activities to tell you how important of this IAS in NTU. The first one is a conference on 60 years of Young-Mills field theories. It basically is a contribution to Professor Xi and Yang in physics. Yeah, and then the next one is a memorial meeting for Nobel laureate Abdul Salam, 90th birthday, also in 2016, also have it in IAS NTU. So Professor Abdul Salam came over, and actually he's the first Muslim to be awarded the Nobel Prize in Science. And this conference is co-chaired by Lars Brink, Mike Dao, and myself. And another important conference organized together with him is a conference on 90 years of quantum mechanics in 2017. This is co-chaired by Lars Brink, MP Chang, and Feng Daxuan, and me. So this conference brought together many experts in the world of physics. And then another important conference is a topological phase transition and new development in 2017. This one is also a very important conference organized by Lars Brink, myself, and few other persons. And then the other few more, let me just briefly mention, is international workshop on exceptional symmetries and space-time, international workshop and on higher spin gauge theory, and another one is a panel discussion on the 7th International Science Youth Forum in 2015. Finally, I really want to express my sincere thanks to Lars Brink for his contribution and support to Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you, KK. I think KK and Lars Brink really brought to Southeast Asia a place where science is not necessarily the most important issue in the society, and they have brought some of the deepest issues on science to that area. Next, we have Professor David Gross, who needs no introduction. David?
Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay, first, I'd like to say hello to everybody. I see so many friends and colleagues from around the world. It's really, I mean, it's such a great pity that Lars can't be here. He would have enormously treasured seeing all of us. And the wide panoply of physicists, friends and colleagues from around the world really is a testimony to Lars's unique personality. Quite amazing. Just such a great pity that he can't be here with us. Hello to Lars's family, who have gone through so much in the last few years. And so I've known Lars for, I don't know, probably, I can't remember when I met him, but it's 50, at least 50 years. And have interacted and intersected with him so many times in so many places that it's really hard to remember them all. And it's hard to believe that they won't continue. I don't think I've ever written a paper with Lars, and I'll leave it to his collaborator, his more direct collaborators, to talk about his contributions to science, which are really great, especially in string theory. But I'd rather talk about Lars as a person, as a friend, as a colleague, as an extremely passionate, warm, and responsible member of our worldwide community of physicists. Lars was one of a very special kind of person in our community who believed that, who understood that, you know, science, physics is more than just papers, but it's really made out of people. And Lars cared passionately about people. He was fascinated by ideas, by our developing understanding of the universe, but also about the people who made these ideas, who put them forward. And he also believed very strongly in making science available and possible for people in every corner of the world, and followed through with that passion in an amazing ability to organize and to propose different ways of facilitating interchange and collaboration between scientists around the world. It's going to be difficult in the coming years to go to conferences because Lars won't be there. And for the last decades, I would meet Lars at just about every occasion, or many occasions throughout everywhere in the world. And his absence will be sorely missed. Lars was contributed to so many different activities. We've heard already from Singapore, where he had an enormous impact. And I would like to thank the people at Singapore for organizing this amazing memorial, bringing us all together. But not just Singapore. In, you know, some of the places that I've intersected with him have been at the strings conferences around the world, Solvay, his efforts in Russia and Eastern Europe after collapse of the Soviet Union, Korea, Vietnam, Potsdam, so many different places where Lars would take interest in and construct mechanisms for supporting his colleagues in physics around the world. He was had enormous energy and he really cared and would volunteer and serve in many, many different capacities. You could always rely on him if you needed some leadership and vision and just hard work. In the last few years, he became more and more interested in the history of science. That was part of the effort in Singapore in recognizing and celebrating his some of the heroes of our field. And to a large extent, he was in the process of becoming a serious historian of science. I'm sure we'll hear some of that from his friend and colleague, Pierre Aumont, with whom he has been, recently wrote a marvelous study of some of Nambu's early works and contributions which aren't so well recognized. Lars was passionately interested not just in the ideas of physics, but in people and the wide variety and wondrous panoply of different types of people who contribute to our field and how they did it. And we've lost not just a great physicist, but also a great historian of science. And maybe Pierre will continue his work, but it's a great loss, I think. But Lars was also a loyal friend. And I think this memorial is a tribute to how many friends he had, close friends around the world who developed a strong personal tie with him. During the last few years, as Lars struggled heroically with an awful disease, I would try to Zoom with him as often as possible, but it was difficult in the last few years as he became weaker and weaker. And I am in total awe of his courage over the last year or two as he fought heroically against a killer. And I'm not sure that I would have had the strength that he exhibited. Lars was always optimistic and looking at the bright side of things. And he fought so hard with the help of his wonderful family. But in the end, like all of us must, lost the battle. He really was a unique and special, loyal friend, and I will miss him dearly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Last September 24th, Lars gave probably his last talk on the session in honor of C.S. Wu. I did not know he was ill, and the talk was so powerfully delivered that I was completely shocked a month later that he was gone. The courage that he exhibited, as what David had just said, must have been just unbelievable, inhuman courage. Thank you. Well, the next speaker, now we go back to his Swedish roots, Björn Johnson from Chalmers. Björn? Björn, you are muted.
I should show some slides, so can you disable screen sharing, okay? Host disabled participant screen sharing. Do you hear that? Hello? Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
We hear
Yes.
you.
Yes, but I cannot share screen if I...
Oh.
Ah, that is, okay, perfect. So.
Here it comes.
Yep.
You're showing the last screen. You should go to the first.
Yeah. no problem. One moment. Alltså, jag kan. Oh, sorry. Okay, I will say a few words about Lars in his when I met him first at CERN, and the work we have done together at both CERN, at our university, Chalmers University of Technology, and in the Royal Academy of Sciences. I met Lars first time in 1971 when he was a CERN visitor. CERN is the European Organization for Nuclear Research, and we worked there together. Both of us had studied at Chalmers University of Technology in Göteborg, and I had the opportunity to go down to CERN already in 1970 to do my thesis work. And Lars came as a fellow to CERN, and then we learned to know each other. So from the summer 1971, we have had contacts and been friends and colleagues. Lars worked at the theory division, and he did a tremendous good work there that we know all. And I worked with exotic nuclei at something called ISOLD. And in the beginning, we met at CERN mainly at the cafeteria. But at the cafeteria, there was some interesting discussions. And I think you all know Holger Beck-Nielsen, a very colorful person. And it was such an amusement to listen to him. Then, mainly, we met each other privately because Lars had his family and I had my family, and we have a Lars family here, and I have my wife together with me here also. And we did things together in the mountains. The Swiss mountains are beautiful. So this is the picture with Lars and me in Saas-Fee, where we spent 2 weeks at the end of his fellowship before they went back to Sweden. But Lars had continued to be at CERN, several short visits over the years. In the 80s, he was 1 month almost every year in the beginning of the 80s. And in the recent year, he has been a special guest of the Director General, and that he did up till about 2018. Then Lars went back to Göteborg in Sweden, and they produced a thesis, a study of dual models in the theory of strong interactions. And this thesis was remarkable because he did that at CERN, and it was a very good thesis, and he got the highest note possible on it, so it became a 7. And I also think the thesis make the way open for him to be at Caltech. So in the academic year, 1976 to 77, Lars was in the group of Margelman, and I think you will hear more from Jan Swartz in a few minutes about that. Then he became professor in 1986 at Chalmers University of Technology. And there he was interacting with the students. He had built up a group, and he interacted with the students. And he had his special way of teaching. So, I mean, he discussed with the student, he had ideas, and he did different courses and discussed with the students. And we have one honor one can get at Chalmers if you are a very good professor, and that to be inspector. I have not translated Kursaktion and Teknisk Fysik because I think that is Swedish and it should not be translated. But he was that for an extremely long time, 1993 to 2013. And after that, the student liked him so much, so he got this title lifelong as an honorary. And a special pleasure for me, of course, is that his successor is Professor Thomas Nielsen, that is also together with us today. At Chalmers, Lars worked in different places. He was Vice Dean at the School of Physics in 1987 and to 93. We worked together there, and then he became chair of the Chalmers Faculty Senate, and that it was in 2002 to 2008. He was a very outspoken person, and he, as a chair of the Senate, he was also a member of the Chalmers board. But Lars loved physics, loved fundamental physics and curiosity-driven physics. And there he suddenly stepped on some industrial people. And he dared to stand up and defend physics for them. And it's so amusing to see his door at Chalmers. It was a sign on that saying, not an entrepreneur, and proud of it. So that was typical Lars. But he did so many things good for Chalmers, so he got in 2018 the Chalmers Medal. Then we go to the Royal Academy. We've heard from Anderson in the beginning, but Lars was, as said, elected member in the physics class 1997. And then he began to work in the Nobel Committee of Physics 2001 and 2004 as a joint member, 2008 to 2013 as member of the Nobel Committee for Physics, and he chaired the committee in 2013. Over this year, I was also member of the Nobel Committee from 2006 to 2012, so we had a 5-year overlap together. And over the years that we worked together, Lars had the opportunity to speak in the concert house in Stockholm. On December 10, there is an award ceremony in Stockholm, and Lars was there 2004 when Gross, Politzer, and Wilczek got the prize. He was there in 2008 with Nambu, Kobayashi, and Mascara, and with Angler and Higgs in 2013. And I would like to finish my talk by just saying what he said at the end. He said, the world is so big, bigger than you ever can imagine. So that was his first words in his speech, and it was the last words in my speech about Lars.
Wow. Thank you very much, Björn. To say that those are touching words is probably an understatement. Some of us are probably holding our tears now. Next, we have Mekhanov from Munich.
Yeah, okay, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
It was very good. So, you see, I was informed that, okay, I should be within 3 minutes. On one hand, 3 minutes is too much. On the other hand, is very little, as you understand. Therefore, let me not to tell all the stories, but let me, in fact, tell you about last 2.5 years of Lars, which characterized him as exceptional personality. As today, I opened my Skype with Lars and I found that it's empty, only smiling is there. I do not know actually what is the policy, but I very well remember his last message about 10 days before he died, because he wrote me that he had visit from doctor, and I asked him, and what did he say? He wrote to me, by now it's all over. Now it's all over. Goodbye, we had a lot of good times, thank you. Okay, so it was moving very moving message. I could not, after that, I didn't know actually what will happen. So in 10 days, nevertheless, when Lars died, okay, I still could not accept it. We became with him really good friends in 2009, when we were both on International Advisory Board of the Memorial meeting for Hector Rubinstein. I think all Swedes know Hector Rubinstein. He doesn't need any introduction. And Lars, after this meeting, okay, together with Lars, we decided to publish a book with personal memories, remembering Hector Rubinstein. It was a very difficult job, I can tell you, because of Hector personality, as I would say. We needed to go through a lot of troubles there. But what Lars himself wrote about Hector, he in fact actually quoted some known Swedish poet, Gullberg, in English translation, but of course he wrote that in Swedish is what much nicer. About Hector, he wrote, he arrived like the wind. What does the wind care about prohibitions? Lars, on the other hand, was not like wind. What I would say, better to say, he was like light breeze. This was explanation of Lars why, for instance, Hector was never the member of any committee. He was never the member of the academy, but as we all know, Lars was the member of all committees and all possible academies. And I can tell you his contribution in this sense was exceptional. I can tell you the range of the members of the committees was from the PhD committee for some student of Ali in Lebanon, up to the chairman of Nobel Prize Committee. But he, of course, contributed quite a lot, for instance, in promoting fundamental science when he headed some committees in Spain, in Romania, in Germany. He was a member of Max Planck Institute in Golm. He also was the head of the board of this review committee for Max Planck Institute here in Germany. In Chile, he started the institute. In Solvay conferences, in restarting Solvay conferences, he was quite operational. Then in École Normale, as far as I remember. And I asked him once, okay, look, guy, how you manage to succeed always in the committees? He told me, oh, it's a very simple recipe. You just give all people to say what they want. They will fight with each other, then they get tired from this fighting, and then you come with your proposal and everybody votes for it. So, nevertheless, it's not so easy to follow this advice, as you understand, because when you listen, people say some kind of stupidity, you cannot really keep silence. But Lars was managing to do it somehow. Okay, so he also was exceptionally helpful, and he told me the story when in 90s, when Soviet Union has collapsed, and then all physicists, of course, were in a really very poor state, in a sense that there was practically no money. He was doing something completely illegal. He was bringing cash in the belt with the risk to be stopped on the Russian custom. Or there was even more risk after the passing Russian custom at this time, because actually the whole airport was just crowded by criminals, real. Okay, they are all real criminals, but okay, let me not go in detail. Then, together with Lars, we organized several, from my point of view, quite successful conferences. And one was in 2016 in Copenhagen, where we managed to bring Stephen Hawking. And I think the number of people who wanted to buy ticket was something like 35,000 to attend Stephen talk. Then we collected very good company, and a lot of people from those who I see here were attending this conference. As I, Faras, and I hope that they remember even dinners there, which we had every day. And then in Simons Center, we made with Lars also conference, but in unusual format. Okay, we decided everybody speaks 1.5 hours on the blackboard, and how he divides this time, it's his own problem. So one day Lars was sharing, the other day me was sharing, third day we asked organizer Nikita Nekrasov. And at the beginning, by the way, when we wanted to invite somebody, Nikita told, oh, we are out of the budget. We cannot invite this guy. Yeah, then Lars came with a great idea. He told that, why wouldn't you write, Nikita, that we will add this extra 1,000, but he has to write among organizers, sponsors of the conference, Simons, Brink, and Mukhanov. After that, the guy realized that perhaps it should not go about 1,000. Then 2016, we were together with Lars, and also Francois was there, on the opening of this medical accelerator, for which I think this Ivanishvili gave $500 million. And we were supposed to participate in the opening ceremony. But Guy, of course, didn't tell anybody anything. And then before we were going to get in the bus and go to this opening, we had no idea where we are going. Guy comes to me and tells me, Slava, why won't you give speech? I told, no. The biggest specialist for speeches is Lars. Okay, Lars, can you give speech? He told me, of course, no problem. But just wait a minute, I have to get to my room and bring the time. Then Lars shows up, he gives nice speech. Let me not repeat it, but then Guy comes to me and tells that it happened nearly scandal because they decided that 2 Swedes would be too much, and therefore they took out of the speakers of Swedish ambassador. I think it was a good decision, nevertheless, because Lars' talk was much more entertaining. Then, during last 2.5 years, I was communicating with him practically every day on Skype, and he was continuing to work all the time, really, because one of the things which he was preparing is his speech in relation with 100 years of Madame Wu. I got transparencies and I told him, okay, now 50 years passed, so you could perhaps tell people why Madame Wu didn't get Nobel Prize, why she didn't share it with Yang and Lee. But then here he said, no, one condition is not satisfied. Not all recipients are dead. And in this sense, when, for instance, you are communicating with Lars, asking so-called questions which you are not supposed to ask, he was like a real quantum qubit in superposition of state yes or no. He was answering to you, but you could not, how it's called, localize. It was yes or no. And as it was mentioned during last day, okay, he was telling me that together with peers, they are finishing this book about Nambu. So, and he was at this time already entirely on morphine because before he was giving talk in China, he told that the schedule was shifted, God knows what happened, but doctor prepared me very well. I asked him, what do you mean prepared? Did they find some new pills or not? He told me no. He gave me just morphine in time. After that, I realized that, okay, there was no way back in this sense. But I want, because you understand that actually till the last moment, he was really working hard. And yesterday, when I was finishing to read some book about history of Greeks, okay, the guy, excellent book, decided to conclude this book. He told that we need actually to have some point, that whom I decided to take as a hero for this point. He decided to take this philosopher Epicurus, who was suffering all his life, but nevertheless was finding also some kind of enjoyment, even in such state in which he was. And he left one note to his friends, which was like this one: on this happy and last day of my life, I write you the following. The pains continue without leaving their excessive force. But all this is counteracted by a soulful joy at the recollection of the reasoning we had. You know that Lars, I think, okay, let me now, because we wrote preface about Hector, and I think actually it also goes well, very well here, that he left a void in Sweden, in the whole world, where he was there, and in the physics community and in the universe where he had worked. There are so many of us around the world who miss him. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's move on. The next is Professor Polyakov from Princeton.
Can you hear me now?
Very well.
Good. Well, it's infinitely sad to be here. Can't believe that I will never see Lars again. He was an old friend. We knew each other for more than 40 years. And we meet regularly when our world lines intersect at this or that space-time point. And whenever we meet, I anticipated that we will go to some, we will go for a long walk, or at the beginning of our friendship, we went jogging. Then after some time, it transformed into long walks. And during these long walks, I learned a lot from Lars about people and about physics. And it was always pleasant anticipation when we meet. And I will tell you a story of a small episode. It's nothing particularly significant, but just an attempt to reconstruct the time past. Just imagine a very beautiful morning, and Lars and I are slowly ascending a trail in Harriman State Park, that's north of New York City. The scenery is fantastic. And I'm telling Lars about the work which I was doing. At that time, I found some unstable points in not really Feynman diagrams, Schwinger-Keldysh diagrams, which I call spiders. And I thought at that time they play a very important role in dynamics of curved spaces. And so Lars was critical, correctly critical, and so we talked about that, about these aspects of this. And then it suddenly occurred to me that I already heard something about spiders before my own work. Namely, I recalled suddenly that there is in a classical Russian novel, which I knew very well, but somehow forgot that it was there. The hero thinks and trying to, the hero tried to summarize he's on the verge of committing suicide, and he thinks, they say that eternity is something special, but what if it is nothing special and it's just an old ramshackled hut, very dirty, and all corners of this hut are full with spiders. When I told this to Lars, we both have had to stop because we started laughing.
I don't know what was funny. It's actually, as time goes, this consideration, eternity as a old hat, became less and less funny for. We actually talked later about, on several occasions, we talked about this notion of eternity, and we still don't know. Well, when I cannot really remember what was funny, but probably we just were in good mood, and it was unexpected idea about eternity, which I still keep thinking about. Okay, well, as I said, it's very, very depressing to understand that our nice walks will not repeat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Polyakov. Let's move on to Professor Rabinovici from Hebrew University.
Hey, dear Maria, dear family, I miss Lars dearly. Lars' passing away is a great loss to his family, the physics community, his many friends, and myself. Lars was for me a dear friend and a very special colleague. In physics, I came across his name first as a postdoc while reading his papers with Paolo Di Vecchia and Paul Howe on string theory, and with Schwartz and Scherk on supersymmetric field theories, both of which have become iconic. Lars had many layers. I've seen him being very conscientious, helping those he was convinced should be helped. Lars had done much good for people all over the planet: Sweden, Moscow, Soviet Union, Brussels, the string network all over Europe, Singapore, Birmingham, and Israel, to name but a few. Lars was like a barefoot cobbler. He bestowed honors on others and did not seek honors for himself.
Please unmute.
I'm unmuted.
No, not you. I'm asking someone who is making sounds to unmute.
Okay, so you heard me about being a cobbler, a barefoot cobbler. He bestowed honors on others and did not seek honors for himself. Lars showed only moderate respect to institutional authority, but there were few people which he deeply respected. Some of them are no longer with us, and some are talking here today. Lars had many layers. I have also observed Lars cutting high-stake deals in the style of rough sailors in the port of Gothenburg. On relevant occasions, he told me with his captivating smile, "You realize I'm not just a pretty face." Indeed, he was right on both counts. He had a pretty face, and he was much more than that. Many times, I patiently listened to him telling jokes. They were always very long, they were always very deep, and also funny. The courage and dignity with which Lars faced his disease is both devastating and inspiring. In his last letter to me, he wrote, "I'm getting worse, to be honest. The body has stopped producing blood work cells, so I get regular blood transfusions. I will get one in an hour, and I take a lot of morphine when it takes to keep the pains down. I get dizzy, and a bit dumber. But Pierre and I got good reviews for our paper on Nambu's Ising model. I deeply miss our discussions, Zoom chats, and you, Lars. May your memory last for long, my dear Viking friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Rabinovici. Next, we have Pierre Ramon from University of Florida. Pierre, you're on. Unmute yourself.
Okay, hold on 1 minute, please.
Yes, we hear you well.
No, I know. I just, oh. Yeah, okay, hold on. Okay, let me try to share my screen. I don't know how to share my screen. This is what happens. So, let me see. Share screen. I don't know. Okay, share. No, I don't know. So I sent to Singapore my, I have just about 3 slides, but I will speak longer than 3 slides.
Yeah, I have it. I can share for you.
Would you please? Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. Well, Eliezer, it's a very difficult act to follow. You're bringing memories, and I don't know. It's difficult, but I will try. So I would like to speak in a way. Well, okay. So I have these 3 slides that I have put together. So the first picture, of course, is Lars at some talk. I forget exactly where. Basically, he shows the way, and of course, it always has to be strings, nothing else. And so I will, but as Eliezer just mentioned, and most of the speakers actually mentioned, Lars was a man of many skills, and was able to compartmentalize his abilities without showing that he had that many abilities, and at the same time he was so good. I don't know if many of you knew it, but Lars, as a child, had a photographic memory and was one of the best part of an elite group of students in Sweden. But I only learned this quite just a few years ago. So I'm not going to speak about Lars the physicist, because we know we all physicists, most of us are physicists. We know basically what he has done. He's been doing fundamental physics. He has made fundamental contributions, and at the same time, he's much more than that. So the one aspect I would like to speak a little bit about is that in all of his machinations, I would say, in the real world, his theme has been always to advocate for fundamental science, in particular fundamental physics. And that is one thing that he has done consistently and very well. And as what was mentioned before, he took particular pleasure sometimes, and he apologized for it, that basically he had maneuvered the committee into finally understanding that the Brink wave was a better way. And he was extremely pleased with some members on the committee as never talked to him again. He was very pleased. He thought that was very good. So I'm going to please turn and okay, please the next slide, if you don't mind. Okay. Now this has been mentioned several times before, but so on September 24 of last year, I remind you that Lars passed away on October 29, okay? He gave a talk at the symposium for the 110th anniversary of CSWU, and he had prepared that for quite a while, in spite of pain, which had been going on now for basically a year. And the title of his talk was 2 Gems in a Box of Pearls. Now, everybody And before him, there had been speakers, some of whom very official types. And basically, what everybody was talking about was, of course, Madame Wu's contribution to the crucial experiment that validated a parity violation. So what was the second? Why two gems? Well, as Lars said right away, one of them was not mentioned here because everybody was extolling, her ability in one thing. And what Lars was talking about was the Wu-Shaknov experiment, which was the first test of macroscopic entanglement, macroscopic. And Lars talked about Wheeler's view of the electron, et cetera, but he was the first person, I mean, C.S. Wu and Shaknov, even though I think most physicists believe that would happen, to measure it because they had the ability, their scintillators, et cetera. Now, this is probably translated from the Swedish, but Lars pointed out this was of Nobel height. I don't know exactly what the Swedish expression is, but basically that's what it was. But the importance of mentioning this, besides the obvious fact that he was doped up with morphine at that time, and he basically had been so strong in wanting to basically give this talk, and he managed to do it. That at the same time, he had a podium, a very important podium, and what he was really talking about was basically the actual physics, and to an audience that perhaps half of which did not want to hear. But that was basically part of his wanting to advocate a month before his death the importance of fundamental physics as giving an example. That was extraordinary. I mean, okay. So please, would you give us the third, okay. Now, one thing is called tenacity, and I remember Lars telling me, and this is a direct quotation, my body will give up before my will. And he was extremely adamant about this. And so in 2 years ago, Lars came back to Florida. He was very happy, very pleased to come to a warmer climate, especially in the dark months. And he came with the news that he had been, he was afraid he had prostate cancer. He had not been totally diagnosed, but his readings were very bad. And he was very emotional. I seldom saw Lars emotional. And we had a wonderful time in Florida. And at that time, roughly speaking, we started talking about writing something. I mean, that was at Lars's initiative, talking something about Nambu. We both were friends and were fans of Nambu. And we were struck by the fact that genius, he was a genius, but also he was a humble genius, which is relatively rare in a physics society. You can be one and the other, but the combination is rather rare. So we wanted to basically write about it. And as of a week ago, I finished it. I mean, it was the hardest thing I've done in my life, to be basically collaborating almost on a daily basis with somebody whose abilities were slowly waning. And this is, so to me, I come back from an emotional journey in which I did not want to take, but I took. And it was very, very personal. And Lars was saying at some point that, you know, I took, I mean, another saying, which was, oh, I took a painkiller and my pain went down, and so did my IQ. And this was the little, and he was completely clinical about this. And the last words he told me was, okay, I'm okay. Meaning he was okay with his fate. So much for that. So my final slide has to do with my friendship with Lars. So please, I will. Okay. So the question is, so I met Lars in Durham in 1975. There was a workshop on string theory. I used to do string theory at some point in my life. And I knew of his work with Holger, who is here, on the Casimir effect in the string theory and understanding the, and then I came up and said, oh, finally, are you the famous Brink? I said, and he remembered that a long time because he said he had never been greeted that way. And we both found an interest in football, soccer. One of his many interests, you know. So we started connecting at many levels. At the very same, soon afterwards, he went to Caltech, and then we met Osa, and we met Maria and Jenny, very small things. But we had also two very small daughters at the time. So, and then we were also with Graham Ross. We also had two very young daughters. And so we became lifelong friends. And I don't know how I can explain friendship, but the best thing I can give is the following. How do you explain it? Well, this was Montaigne, Michel de Montaigne was, his friend La Boétie died early. And people asked him how come La Boétie was much younger, etc., etc. And the best thing that Montaigne could say, is this is an old French, because it was him and because it was me. And that is as far as one could explain. So thank you very much. It's difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. Let's move on to John Schwartz of Caltech.
I'm can you hear me all right?
Yes, very well.
I'm very happy to have this opportunity to participate in this very moving discussion that we're having. I first met Lars in the summer of 1971 when I went as a visitor to CERN, where Lars was a research fellow at the time. I was an assistant professor in Princeton at that time myself. And we didn't know each other before, but we were each familiar with the other's work. I was very interested in research that Lars had done with David Olive while they were at CERN. And he was interested in work that I had just been doing with André Neveu in Princeton. And so we had a lot of discussions where we were pursuing some of these very early works on string theory and related topics. And this was the beginning of a lifelong friendship for us. So that's over 50 years ago. Lars had, so in 1972, I moved to Caltech. And Lars visited me and our group at Caltech several times for extended visits of 2 or 3 months at a time. And we had some very exciting and pleasant collaborations during that era. Altogether, during the 1970s and the 1980s, we had 10 co-authored papers. Of these, perhaps the best known is one that introduced a type of theory called N=4 super Yang-Mills. We were pleased 20 years later when it turned out that this kind of theory plays an important role in some of the more recent developments of the subject. I remember once when Lars and Osa were arriving at Los Angeles International Airport, and I went to greet them and drive them back to Pasadena. And they were walking down a ladder at the terminal there for the immigration. And I saw Lars carrying a little basket in his right hand, and that turned out was Maria. So I've known her very long. In 1978, Lars and I did some travels together. I was on my way from Pasadena to a sabbatical year in Paris, and I was going the long way around with multiple stops, and Lars joined me at the beginning of that travel. So we traveled together to Hawaii, spent a few days there, and then we went on to Tokyo, where we participated in an international conference. From there, we went on as tourists to Hong Kong and Bangkok. And after that, we went our separate ways after Bangkok, but we had a good time in each of these places. And got to see parts of the world which were very different from what we were familiar with at the time. In more recent years, most of my interactions with Lars have been at conferences in Singapore. I've been to 3 or 4 of them. The 2 of the more recent ones were one for celebrating Murray Gell-Mann's 80th birthday, and another one was for the Feynman centennial. So I have many happy memories of Lars and his family, and obviously it's very sad that he's no longer with us. He was a great friend, and I will miss him. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yeah, those were touching words. Professor Chan Taiwan, you're on
Yes,
next.
I am here.
Go ahead.
My name is Tran Thanh Van, and I would like to thank the organizing committee, and more particularly Professor K.K. Froy and Professor Long Chun Kwek for inviting me to say some word in memory of our mutual friend, Lars Brink. Lars is an exceptional physicist with many, many breakthrough work, the importance of which our friend present at the meeting have already celebrated. And for me, I humbly join in this anonymous tribute. And so I have known each other for long time. Thanks to the conference in high energy physics, we have really collaborated together since 2015 for the organization of the series of Science and Society, whose goal is promote a better understanding between scientists and non-scientists, a better understanding between scientists and more particular with the world of policy maker. In 2015, on the advice of Mark Heno of the Thornbury Institute, we invited Lars to join us in organizing in EC's Quinion the first conference of this series entitled Fundamental Science and Society, intended to affirm the role of fundamental science as a source of many applications, leading to many advances in technology, which are essential for our present way of life. Lars has accepted to be part of the steering committee of this conference and accepts the very, very heavy task of organizing and moderating the panel, the importance of pursuing basic science in emerging countries. Lars invited the most representative personality from China, from Singapore, from Vietnam, as well as the highest scientific official to participate to this meeting. Thus, Lars has opened a crucial window for understanding the importance of basic science in emerging countries. In this panel, whose magnificent reasons have paved the way for the development of science in Vietnam, it has played a very important role in helping the government to elaborate the scientific program in the recent year. We are very, very deeply grateful to him. In 2018, he again actively contributed to the design of the second conference in this series, Science and Development, and his panel emphasized on the opening of the scientists to an international dialogue. And as he has wrote, science is a key for development of the society. Scientists and political leaders must talk to each other, and science must be taught at the highest level. The concrete example were given, such as the CISM project designed by Howard Chopper. The reason of which can be a better understanding between nations in conflict and lead to peace. Dialogue and collaboration, as Lars has conceived them, as a key word, like music. The music can soften hurt and kill hatred. In all of these working opportunities I have with Lars, I was very impressed by his dedication that all the time necessary to contact and discuss with each of the panelists, and then allow to everyone to express their vision and their conviction in a very constructive contribution. I have learned a lot from him, from Lars, his critical and demanding spirit to carry out our project. Our conference have a greatly benefit from his number of connections around the world. Alongside with the immense heritage led by Lars and to the scientific international community, I would like to share very humbly with a member of Lars' family and with our scientist friend that I keep from Lars warm in my heart and always the memory of an extremely endearing personality whose attentive and deep gaze denote listening and vision to improve the world through science. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Trantaivan. I think there's no doubt that while Lars' impact is global, his impact, particularly in Asia, can really be felt by a lot of people. Well, Maria and Jenny, the screen is yours.
Yeah, thank you. We would like to share screen as well. So, host disabled participant screen sharing, it says.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. Well, can you see it?
It's coming. Yep, got it.
Okay, good. So thank you all for your kind words. We are really overwhelmed. And we would also like to thank the organizing committee to organize this memorial event in honor of our father. And we hope to show another side of him that many of you might not have seen before. And we would like to start with a picture of him from Geneva.
Yes,
We cannot hear you.
Can you not hear us? Oh, why is that?
No, go ahead. Now we can.
Can you hear us?
Have you
yes.
Have you heard anything?
So far, only about him in Switzerland or something like that.
Oh. Okay, yes, here's in Switzerland, in Geneva. And here he's really in his true element because he loved sports. He loved hiking, running, skiing. And my father was a very competitive person who always wanted to time his achievements, and he always wanted to improve himself, not only in sports, but actually in every aspect of life. And today it's very popular to say that you would like to become the version of yourself. But I think my father really was a version of himself.
Maybe you can speak closer to the computer.
Oh, can you hear it now? Better?
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, I'm very close. Did you hear
Don't
what I
move
said?
away from it. Don't move away from it.
Okay, I will try. I will try. So yes, like I said, I really think he was the best version of himself, even though he might not have put it that way. And let me see if I can take another, oh, like this. And my father, he had so many skills, which I had not the time to tell you right now. But painting was not really one of them, as you can see here. However, he loved painting and playing with Maria and I when we were children. And he was a very fun, a very adventurous and positive father always. And at home, he also sang a lot, and I mean a lot. He sang during, when he was doing dinner and breakfast, and there's a Swedish saying, and I don't know if I really translate this into English correctly, but he sang rather than well. So when we grew up, our father worked a lot and traveled a lot, but even so, we always felt that he was very present in our lives. And we often followed him abroad, like here in Geneva. And we loved to be with him, and we had so many good times together. He could turn the most tedious things into grand adventures. He had a lovely sense of humor, and we laughed a lot. And he was a true optimist. Yes, and I cannot even begin to explain what he meant to his family. He taught me my first sentence, and he wanted me to say that my father is the best, typical of him. And I said my father's name is the best. We had a lot of fun talking about this during the years. He really was my hero. And in school, when I was supposed to write an essay on my role model, I actually wrote about my father. He was also very engaged in everything concerning his grandchildren. They loved to play with him, and to them, he was the fun grandfather who took them on adventures. And to the very end, he kept the ability to see things through the eyes of a child. And here are some pictures of him playing with his grandchildren, like here at Midsummer a few years ago with Jenny's eldest daughter. And he often accompanied his grandchildren to their various sports events. And I told you before, he loved soccer. He updated.
We cannot hear you again.
Okay, can you hear me now? Very
Yes.
strange. Okay, so to the very end, before he passed away, we saw that he checked the scores of his favorite soccer teams. And here's a picture of the amusement park in Gothenburg. And he was a former swimmer. When he grew up, he used to compete in swimming. So he taught us, as well as his grandchildren, how to swim and dive and enjoy being in the water. So we spent a lot of time together in the sea and in the pool. And here's a picture from our summer resort on the west coast in Sweden. And there's also a pool there. And if the grandchildren did something, he tried it too. We finish by showing a picture
from his 65th anniversary in Gran Canaria. He liked to spend his time with his family and his friends. And in that way, we think it's very nice that we are joined here together today. So we know that he would have appreciated it. But thank you all very much for today.
Thank you. Also from Almeda.
Yes, I'm very grateful to you for these contributions today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Brinks family. I don't know how to say this, but I'm sure in our own way, every one of us share the sorrow of you losing your loved one, Lars. We have very bit of small amount of time left. Is there anyone else in this group who would like to say something? Can you unmute yourself and just talk?
Well, I just would like to say how much we all appreciate Lars's scientific contributions, both the invention of maximally supersymmetric Yang mills, which turned out to be the basic playground for so many developments in decades later, and his work as pioneer and one of the first to show that it was conformally invariant, which was so important later. His work on supersymmetric formulations of particle actions aiming toward supersymmetric formulations of string actions, and his many contributions to light cone physics, and of course the passion with which he pursued it throughout his life, up to his last papers on BMS symmetry, seen from a new point of view. So apart from everything that's been said in so much detail about what a wonderful person Lars is, there's the enduring influence of his scientific work.
I'd like to attribute the following comment that I heard once from, I think it was Mike Turner of Chicago, that talked about supersymmetry. He says supersymmetry is obviously a real symmetry because half of the particles are already found. Now, anyone else who would like to say something? We have a few more minutes. Well, 1 or 2 minutes left.
Yeah, I'd like to just say my appreciation for his work, editorial work for World Scientific. The refereeing there is terrific, and I always got very helpful comments from the referees, and I think also from anonymously from Lars.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Well, I know that Frank Wilczek worked closely with Lars at the T.D. Lee Institute in Shanghai Jiao Tong University. Can you just say a few words about that, Frank? Well, if I'm afraid,
okay,
Frank.
I'm afraid I'm in a kind of noisy environment here. I'm at a hospital.
Okay.
I'm getting gallbladder surgery later today. But
okay,
let me just say, I loved Lars. I loved talking and meeting with him. He always had a smile on his face and a twinkle in his eye, and wonderful jokes to tell. And just a pleasure to be around. And he did participate very actively and enthusiastically in trying to expand our community, of which he was such a great representative, into China. And it's a work in progress, but his contribution will be a lasting.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
I see that Holger Beck-Nielsen is interested to say something. Go, you're muted, Holger. Unmute. Unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
I am Sven-Olof Holmgren, and I know Lars since our thesis work. We both had one Nilsson as a supervisor. Mine had, Lars had, first name was Jan, and Sigvard was the first name of my supervisor. And we were both working on our thesis, and since then we've kept contact. And I also want to say that I appreciate very much being a friend of him since then. We had some, I'm an experimentalist. I did bubble chamber physics at CERN in those days, and he helped with the analysis of those. So part of his thesis is also my experimental work, but we kept contact since then all the time. And I also talked to Lars several times during his last period, and I am so sorry for that we lose him, but also we have so many nice memories of friendship, so which I share with all of you and the family. So thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have to come to the end, but let me end by asking Bertil Anderson, if you're still on, could you say some final wisdom of words, since it more or less all started with you?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think this session speaks for itself. I think this has been extremely important and emotional. And I, of course, am very proud to have been part of this. And I've been proud of knowing Lars and worked with him in several contexts. And I think for all of us here today, hearing these various talks from his colleagues and friends, touching on different angles of his really dedication to science, his friendship, his devotion, and his sort of family life has been very special. And I'm sitting here now in Stockholm, not so far from the academy where I used to interact with him. And of course, he's one of the key people in Swedish science and Swedish physics. So I thank everyone in Singapore that has arranged this, and also for all the participation that has given us his memorial comments. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This whole session has been recorded, and we will distribute it worldwide once it's edited. Thank you very much to everyone who spent time today with us. We all remember our good friend Lars deeply, and we are all very sorry that we lost him. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Goodbye.